Vandals attacked the Millonarios team's sports store outside El Campín Stadium in Bogotá using gas.
We all know these kind of vandals, with or without a tie, but very few of us know about the original vandals. The relationship between these names is clear proof that ideological propaganda is as old as Rome itself. In fact, no one would imagine that the original Vandals looked more like this, just like this. I used the past tense because now they are just historical memories. Who were the Vandals and what is their legacy? Are you interested? Alright then, stay until the end of the video. We moved to the coastal regions of the Baltic Sea between present-day Germany and Poland during the 1st century AD. This is where a series of East Germanic peoples lived, meaning their languages were related to modern German, Swedish, or Dutch. Among them were the Burgundians, the Goths, and the ones we're interested in, the Vandals. The first documentation about these peoples appeared around the 1st century AD by historians such as Pliny the Elder. Around the 2nd and 3rd centuries, migrations to the east and south began, settling between the Oder and Danube rivers. Do you know? They were nomadic peoples who were not yet organized into states, but rather into small clans led by a king, and they were constantly on the move. Someone has to find those resources, right? Like the rest of the Germanic peoples who lived outside the Roman borders, the Vandals were considered barbarians. The first contacts with Rome took place around the 3rd century AD, during the period of the Great Migrations. Yes, when Rome began its decline at the end of the 4th century, the Huns arrived. No, not the ones you hear about in Mulan, which, by the way, is full of historical inaccuracies. I aim the cannon at Shangyung. No, I mean the real Huns led by Attila, coming from Central Asia, who forced many Germanic peoples, including the Vandals, to move further south and east. That's how the Vandals crossed the Danube and entered the Western Roman Empire. And that's where the trouble starts. In December of the year 406, they crossed the Limes, or Roman frontier, crossing the frozen Rhine River and invading the region of Gaul. Here they loot several cities and continue their advance towards Spain. In the autumn of 409, they entered the Iberian Peninsula and took Baetica, present-day Andalusia, and Galaecia, present-day Galicia. How will you know? Rome was weaker than Oku after his first fight against Vegeta.
Binarily strong, but the truth is I don't know how to tell you. All of this occurred to me when he was about to die.
So the Vandals were not the only barbarian people who crossed the Limes. Once in Spain, they coexisted with other peoples, such as the Suebi and the Alans, in a context of war and territorial division. The dying Rome then plans desperate measures such as the Federati or Federates. That is, giving this title to foreign tribes that allowed them to settle in imperial territory in exchange for providing troops and military support. Who were the suck-ups who agreed to this? The Visigoths, which if you're Spanish, you should know very well, since some of their statues are next to the Royal Palace of Madrid. If you don't know them, watch this video. The Visigoths then legally settled in the region of Aquitaine in the southwest of present-day France in exchange for fighting against the invaders of Spain. Vandals, Suebi, and Alans. The Vandals who settled in Baetica, called the Silingi, were defeated, as were those located in Galatia. The Hasdingi fled to the south. Under the leadership of the most famous of all the Vandals, Genseric, In 429, Genseric convinced about 80,000 Vandals, including women and children, to cross the Strait of Gibraltar to settle in North Africa, which was also part of Rome and was known as the province of Mauretania Tingitana, which has nothing to do with present-day Mauritania. If you're wondering, like any good megalomaniac, he proclaims himself king, which is considered the beginning of the kingdom of the Vandals. It turns out that by then, the Moros, a tribe of duty, yes, that's where the name comes from, had been rebelling against Rome for decades. Despite this, the Romans needed troops to defend other more critical areas, like Italy and Gaul. In other words, they were neglecting Mauritania even more than the New York subway. Music to the ears of Genseric, for whom conquering this province was a piece of cake. But would Genseric settle for just that? And in 439, they captured the province of Africa with its capital in Carthage, which, as you may remember, was the center of the Punic Empire. So it was the most important Roman city in North Africa, now turned into the capital of the Vandal kingdom. From then on, the Vandals built a powerful naval fleet that allowed them to achieve new conquests: Corsica, Sardinia, Breveminti, the Balearic Islands, and Sicily. But the year that went down in history was 455. Here, the historic sack of Rome took place. Gold, silver, works of art, statues, imperial jewels. And they took the widowed Empress Licinia Eudoxia as a prisoner. An even bigger humiliation than Brazil's 2014 World Cup semi-final. As you can imagine, this looting gave rise to the later reputation of vandalism, which we will talk about later. Just wait a little bit. Besides everything they stole, the looting gave them a certain prestige and respect. And under Genseric, the Vandal kingdom became a true power in the Western Mediterranean. The problem begins when the leader dies and a series of internal succession struggles breaks out. Conflicts over power are compounded by religious conflicts. The Vandals converted to Arianism, a Christological doctrine that holds that Jesus Christ did not have the same nature as God the Father. On the other hand, the Berbers of the North African interior resisted Vandal control. Things then start to get complicated. Although Rome officially falls in 476 AD, did the eastern part of the empire survive? Yes, the one we know as the Byzantine Empire with its capital in Constantinople. In a moment, I'll keep telling you about them as they grow stronger. On the other hand, Huneric, successor of Genseric, faced struggles with the nobility and his family. And he couldn't think of anything better than to launch a violent persecution against the Catholics. His death coincided with a great famine in the Vandal kingdom, marking the beginning of a fiscal crisis in the kingdom. His successor, Guntamund, tried to reconcile with the Catholic Church so they would support him in stopping the advance of the Berbers, but without success. His successor, Trasamund, sought external alliances with the Byzantines, but it was his successor, Hilderic, who was more tolerant with the Catholics, who managed to secure them. Something that angered the Arian factions, as you can imagine. That's how Hilderic was overthrown by Gelimer. In 530, the Byzantine Emperor Justinian I, nicknamed the Great, declared war on the Vandals under the pretext of restoring Hilderic. Thus, the Vandalic War broke out, in which the Byzantine troops were led by the famous General Belisarius. Faced with the Byzantine might, Gelimer surrendered, which meant the end of the Vandal kingdom, now turned into the Praetorian Prefecture of Africa, a Byzantine province. You might wonder, did he really just surrender and give up all his territory like that? I wondered the same thing, and the answer is that Gelimer was granted large estates in Galatia. He was even offered the title of patrician, which he refused because he didn't want to renounce his faith. Ariana, like any politician who deserts his people, the common Vandal people tried to start one last revolt in 546, which was crushed by the Byzantines. The Vandals, now without a state to represent them, were gradually assimilated. Some integrated with the local Berber populations, others fled to the Visigothic and Ostrogothic kingdoms, and others followed Gelimer to Galicia. It is estimated that their language disappeared as a spoken language within 1 or 2 generations after the fall of the kingdom, leaving almost no written text, so today we know very little about their language. Is that what happens if you don't create literature or culture? Despite the above, the great legacy of the Vandals lies in this very word the Vandals used to describe violent criminals. Just like the British, the Romans were great propagandists. Although the Vandals sacked Rome in 455, the event was less violent than is usually imagined. They didn't burn the city, they didn't massacre its inhabitants, and they even agreed to a dialogue with Pope Leo XI. Although the word remained in the lexicon of Romance languages, the term vandalism was not created until 1794 by the clergyman Henri Lecoeur during the French Revolution. He used it to denounce the destruction of works of art and religious symbols during the riots. This reinforced the traditional negative view of the Vandals, who in reality were not as vandalistic as we are led to believe. So, as you can see, the Vandals had much more history than just being simple looters. They moved throughout Europe, made Rome itself tremble, founded their own state, and managed to establish themselves as an important power in the Mediterranean, even if it was only for a very brief period. The Vandals are then living proof that in history, not everything is as it seems. What other impactful fact do you know about the Vandals? Don't forget to leave your comment and subscribe to the channel. I'm including my social media links in the description. In case you want to watch the new videos at the premiere and have more interaction with me, your donations on Patreon, Unamanito.net, or channel memberships are welcome. See you next time.